games, you get your tail cut. And after that, is ifs and buts. If I was bigger, if I was stronger, if my hands was a little longer, and all the time you're ifing and you're butting. If and buts doesn't mean a thing. If and buts are words that you use when you want to make excuse, like I could have this, I could have that, I should have this, I should have that. Well, if you could have,
I could have that,
you should have,
I should have that.
And if you could have,
I could have that,
you would have.
I would have that.
If you could have this, and you could have that, you would have this, and you would have that, and all the coulda and the shoulda, everything would have been like they would have. You could have what?
I could have that.
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 Na me ay. You can't box, you jump in the ring. And all the time, you're bobbing and you're weaving. What up, cuff? You fall on the ground. Not for help, you wouldn't stay down. You jump up quick, whap in your head. Before you lie down and pretend you're dead. Before you tell yourself to resign. One set of nonsense going through your mind. I could have this.
I could have that.
I should have this.
Good evening to our wonderful listeners, and welcome back to our program. Of course, we will be having our first program for the year. We should have actually met a couple of weeks ago, but of course we had to cancel the program because there was some other event actually colliding with our event that night. But tonight, we're starting with a bang. We're starting with a bang, a real big bang tonight, as we continue to attempt to educate our public on matters not only relating to the Ministry of National Security and Legal Affairs, but as we have said before, what we have made our mantra is to actually edify the public on issues that are important to transform and to add value to our lives. One of these discussions that we have been having for a while now in Dominica, which is still trending to an extent, speaks to the whole issue of electoral reform. As you know, there are three proposed bills, and one, of course, is a subsidiary regulation, so that will be four, basically, three parent bills and one regulation. And we have with us tonight the most distinguished and son of the soil, a big man in his own right, and I almost said honorable, but the former Attorney General of Dominica. He is a legal draft person by profession. He has extensive experience working in the region. And I can recall being at some meetings with him when he worked, I think, for CARICOM, I think, was it? As a draft, as the lead draft person then, when we were actually dealing with Cricket World Cup, and we were developing, of course, the infrastructure, not only in terms of security, but the legal framework to actually guide the process then. So we had Mr. Laronde on our very first program. And we're happy to have him here tonight. And we have so many issues to talk about, but what we're trying to do here tonight is to maybe concentrate on some of the salient issues that are very important to our potential voters and Dominicans alike. And so let us firstly introduce Mr. Laronde, and he'll tell us something about himself.
Good evening. I don't have much to say. It has all been said. From Dominica. I'm an attorney at law, barrister in law, at solicitor. I'm a former attorney general of Dominica. I've worked at CARICOM and regionally in Anguilla and elsewhere. And I come here to do the best I can to move the discussion forward in the interest of democracy and good governance in Dominica.
I love what you said, in the interest of democracy. Okay, so we have, Mr. Laronde, as I said just now, three proposed parent bills before us, and of course we have the regulations to the registration of electors bill or act. Sorry. What we want to do, I mean, there's so many issues we can talk about, but let us firstly start with something that I've been spoken about for the longest while, and there's a debate going on as to how do we cleanse the list. You know, there has been, talk about a bloated list, and then there's the need to cleanse the list, to come up with a clean list. So it has been proposed a process of confirmation, and if you were to go under section, I think 49 of the parent act, proposed act, that is to say, the Registration of Electors Act, and it speaks about a confirmation process, and where does tell us something about your understanding as to what is meant by a confirmation process, and in terms of the intention of that process, how do you see it in terms of achieving the intended objective of cleansing the list?
Okay, my take is that you have an existing list, and there's a procedure whereby one gets on that list. Now, confirmation is a simple word to understand. It is you are confirming what already exists. So if you're talking about confirmation in terms of your voters list, you're essentially saying that if X is on the list, he has to take certain actions to confirm his right to remain on the list. That's not a novel idea. That's not difficult, in my opinion, to understand. In that I am on the list, Anthony P. Laronde, and there's a procedure whereby I confirm, whereby I ensure, whereby it is possible for my name to remain on the list. Mm-hmm. And if somebody fails to meet the criteria, that person will be removed from the list.
Okay.
The alternative is that you scrap the existing list and you begin house to house, costly exercise, time-consuming exercise.
Okay. Okay. So in other words, therefore, if you do not show up during that confirmation process, bearing in mind, of course, once that proposed act that we're speaking about, which is, of course, the Registration of Electors Act, once it gets into effect, is enacted into Parliament, it is signed by the President, the Commission has up to 40 days to begin the process of ensuring that we are provided with the time to confirm our name. Those of us who have registered already. Mm-hmm. And that is that we have a period of 12 months to do that, and it can be extended to 15 months. So you're saying that if within that prescribed period of time somebody fails to show up, that person's name will be deleted from your list.
Because that person can also take action whereby the Commission can allow the person to make a late application.
Right.
But you have 12 months, and as you correctly say, you have 15 months. There can be an extension whereby everyone who is on the list get the opportunity to say, I should be and I should remain on the list.
Right. And then if you fail to do that, and if you were to go back, if I want to, we want to.
But it does not bar that person who failed to do that from getting on to the register. In other words, it's not a situation where you fail to confirm, you fail to exercise your right within the specified time. Mm-hmm. It does not block you out. Mm-hmm. If you meet the criteria, you can register.
Right. You can confirm your name on the list. Yeah. So that's important. So would you actually expect somebody who is not alive to present his or herself to go through that confirmation process?
I would expect any sensible, reasonable person to exercise his or her right to reconfirm because they want to remain on the list.
Right. And the reason why I'm asking that, I heard just a couple of days ago that what we want in Dominica is for dead people, the people who are dead, and the names still appear on the list, to be removed. And certainly after that process of confirmation, and a new list will be developed.
Yeah.
Isn't that so?
Yeah, but as I said earlier, I mean, if you fail to exercise your right to go through the procedure of confirmation, if you meet the criteria, if you meet the requirements,
Yeah.
you can come and register as a voter at any time after that.
Precisely.
It's not that after 15 months you cannot come
Precisely.
again.
So precisely. So that it means therefore your name will not appear on the list. But if you meet the residency requirement, the 3 months residency requirement, you can come under a normal registration.
That's right.
And what you're trying to say, which is important, the confirmation process does not prevent the normal, continuous registration process.
Not at all.
Okay, thank you very much. So the two. Now the other
And
issue,
it does not exclude anyone who is qualified to vote from getting on the list.
precisely. All right, which means you're able to prove that you have resided in a particular address for 3 months continuously, and that you're 18 years and above, you're a citizen of the Commonwealth, was to the effect, and and that is important to establish. Now, Mr. Laronde, I've been hearing about re-registration as opposed to confirmation, that they want to scrap the list and to go through a process of re-registration. What is your view on that?
Well, as I said earlier, to me, the most sensible thing is to go through the process of confirmation. In other words, to scrap the list and start from scratch and go house to house, it will exclude people who should be there, who are not on island, for example,
Thank you. Right.
but who do what is necessary to reconfirm and show that I have a right to vote
Right.
and remain on the list.
Yes. No, and I think that is important, and maybe you maybe want to add some more currency to that. Why is that important? That if you were to go through a process of re-registration, you might end up excluding people who have a right to vote. Because bear in mind what you're implying, that your name got on your list because you had met the criteria to have gotten it there in the first place, and in order for it to be removed, you're alive. There has to be due process. So,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
But if you start from scratch, you then have to go house to house, and you'll be registering only people on the island.
Right. Let us at least make a reference to that, to give a little more currency to that, and people who are on the voters list, but they are off island. Why is that important to ensure that their right is actually preserved?
Well, why it's important? For example, I spent a long time in Anguilla, but I never gave up my residence here.
Yeah.
My home is in Dominica, but I choose to work in Anguilla. So if you have a system of re-registration and I'm not here, and you scrap the list, and you go to Grand Bay, you'll not find me because I'm in Anguilla, and that's where I am, but I'm temporarily resident in Anguilla. I've not given up my residence or my domicile in Dominica. But you will not meet me here.
Now, use the word domicile, we'll get there in a while, and what it simply means is that you might be overseas doing something, but you recognize the permanent address as Dominica.
Yeah, that's
Right,
my
okay.
home, that's my residence, that's where I'll come back to. That's where my family is, that's where my wealth is, that's where my land is, that's where I belong.
Yeah. Now, there's another issue that we want to actually hear your views on, and as it relates to Dominicans living overseas. For example, I have a number of my family members reside overseas. Or I can use it with some of them resided, they're not back. They left Mao and I could not have recalled them when they left. But three of them are back. They have bought homes and built the homes. You understand? But the names were on the voters list. It never came off. Now, there's a particular position that people who are living overseas, Dominicans who are living overseas, ought not to be voted in Dominica. And therefore, if you were to go through a re-registration process, the people, in other words, you have to be living in Dominica to be able to vote for your member of parliament. What is your take on that? Insofar as international best practices.
Okay, the thing is, it depends on what the country wants. And some people might not like to hear what I'm going to say, but the will of the people is spoken by the government. In other words, the government is voted in and put in place to govern for peace, order, and good government. And once the government is in power, the government makes decisions in cabinet, and those decisions might end up as act of parliament. And that's the function of government.
You're making reference to section 41 of the Constitution.
42, I think.
42 or 41.
Okay, so government decides what it wants to do for the benefit of the people. And once it goes through the proper procedure, that is what it is. Now, some people will feel that, okay, someone lives in overseas and they never come back except election time. But then the flip side of the coin is some people come back all the time, like my friends in St. Thomas. Then some people make substantial contributions to Dominica, although they're resident outside. The same way that you have some people who come here at election time, they make no contribution in Dominica, but they're campaigning, they do all kind of things, they don't have a plant in Dominica. So where do you draw the line? Because as I said, some of us out there, when we're out there, we make substantial contributions there. So it's not a man on the side of the road or on the bus to Bellevue that can just say, well, people overseas shouldn't vote, people who live overseas shouldn't vote. I mean, how do we get to a balance? Because these people make contributions here.
No, one of the views I hold, because I give prominence to citizenship, and to me nothing can take that away from you, and if you're a citizen and your name is on the voters list, you have a right to vote, because at one stage you're living in Dominica, at one stage you met the residency requirement as prescribed under the Constitution and in our election laws, and you got on the voters list. And the international best practice, though, Mr. Laronde, is tied to citizenship, and that is something we also have to take into consideration. And it takes us to the next area we want to look at. And there has been some misinterpretation, in my view, inadvertently or sometimes maybe deliberately so, as to the true definition and application of section 43(2)(a) and 2(b) under the Constitution. And the impression that is created, and I would like you to help us there as an expert, as a legal practitioner. So people who draft laws. These are the ones who draft the laws, and you are the ones. And the impression is created that in order to vote, as per the section I just referenced, you have to be resident in Dominica. Is that the true understanding of section 43(2)(a) and 2(b)?
Okay, for the elucidation of the listeners, in order that all of us understand exactly what we're talking about, I need to read section 43(2)(a) of the Constitution of Dominica. It says, every Commonwealth citizen of the age of 18 years or upwards who possesses such qualifications relating to residence or domicile in Dominica as Parliament may prescribe, shall, unless is disqualified by Parliament from registering as a voter for the purpose of electing representatives, be entitled to be registered as such a voter in accordance with the provisions of any law in that behalf, and no other person may be so registered. I've heard and I've read a lot of interpretations and a lot of views on section 33 2A. And I must say I'm very glad to give an interpretation which I think a court of law would agree with. And if the first court does not agree, I think the appellate court and the CCJ would most likely agree. I am not on the courts, but I'm saying that because I am of the view that the interpretation I'm going to give is the proper interpretation. The first thing we'll do is we will look at the words, unless he is disqualified by Parliament from registration as a voter for the purpose of electing representatives. This is telling us that Parliament has the power to pass a law that disqualifies someone from exercising the right to vote. Such a law would be, and in the draft now you have such a section.
Section 8.
If he's been convicted of bribery. If he's been convicted of undue influence. The draft has that, and our existing law has that.
Yeah.
That when you're convicted, not that only you get a fine, but you're prevented from taking your seat in Parliament, or you're prevented from exercising your vote. This is one. The section tells us one has to be 18 years or upwards, and you need to have such qualifications relating to residence or domicile in Dominica as Parliament may prescribe. And to read it again.
Yes, read it again.
Simple English. Who possesses such qualifications relating to residence or domicile in Dominica as Parliament may prescribe. It means that Parliament may prescribe a residency requirement, a domicile requirement, or no such requirement.
And it's important because, as you said, under the Registration of Electors Act that has been proposed, is more or less replicating what currently exists. But under Section 7 in the proposed Act, it tells you the qualification that you ought to have. And that, of course, is more or less codifying what you just read there from the Constitution. Isn't that so?
Now,
Yeah.
under that section, Parliament can place a residency requirement, domicile requirement, on a Commonwealth citizen.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you my position personally. I do not think any Commonwealth citizen, apart from a Dominican citizen, should have the right to vote in Dominica. That's my personal take. This is a remnant of a colonial tie. We're independent, but we've maintained this Commonwealth citizen having the right to vote in Dominica. And as we correctly do in the legislation, we say you must have a residency requirement for that Commonwealth citizen.
Yeah. Of 1 year?
But as I said earlier, it is not mandatory that you have the residency or domicile requirement. So if I was the decision maker I would put recommend no requirement of residency or domicile for Dominican citizens. And if, and as I said, if, I'm saying if because I don't think we should give Commonwealth citizens the right to vote, in spite of how long they remain here. I think the right to vote should be for Dominican nationals. But if it was not my decision, it was a collective decision, and it was so desired, yes, you have the residency and the domicile requirement for that Commonwealth citizen.
Bear in mind,
But I'll go again,
just
just 1 minute,
just take a
Honorable Minister.
okay.
The Constitution does not make it mandatory.
Right.
The residency thing is a thing of choice.
Right. Now, what I was trying to say just now is that the whole issue of Commonwealth citizens being allowed to vote is not unique to Dominica. It's something that's throughout the Caribbean and even bigger countries that belong to the Commonwealth. But of course, I think you're stating with clarity there that you have the view that the residency requirement is not compulsory. And if
It's not. Absolutely not.
And if you had a choice, there would have been, as far as you're concerned, no residency requirement for a Dominican, a naturally born Dominican or a Dominican.
And that would be constitutional.
Right. Yeah. Because yeah, you're right. But having said that, though, if you're going back to the qualification requirement, under the proposed amendment, if we were to go to, I guess you have the bill with you, the Registration of Electors Act under Section 7(1). Clearly, the intention there is to codify what you just read in Section 43(2)(a) and B. And it says that, do you have the bill?
Yeah.
If you were to read Section 7(1), just to give the listeners an appreciation as to how deliberate the drafters were in ensuring that the spirit of the Constitution has been adhered to and followed. Yeah. Section 7(1) under the Registration of Electors Act, the proposed one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that, for example, right now, it applies to both the citizen and the Commonwealth citizen.
Mm.
But I'm saying the Constitution does not make it mandatory that there must be a residence requirement for citizens of Dominica.
Yeah. But if we were to if we were just to give the listeners an appreciation as to what we're trying to do is to make a distinction between residency requirement to get your name on the voters list, as opposed it being a prerequisite for you to vote. Do you get my point? Yeah. And that is what is being pushed by some. So we want to make sure that it's properly clarified to the public that there's a distinction between one qualifying to get his name on the voters list as opposed to somebody who has already gotten his own name on the voters list to exercise his franchise to vote. They say that in order for you to vote, and that you must reside in Dominica 3 months before an election, and that is not the intention of the section that you have just read. Certainly not under the Constitution.
No, the Constitution does not. It depends. You can make whatever requirement you have in your law. Mm. The Constitution does not say. It's very clear, unless he's disqualified by Parliament or possess such qualifications relying to resident domicile in Dominica as Parliament may prescribe.
Okay. And so that therefore, Section 7(1) under the proposed measure, the Registration of Electors Act, it says subject to the provision of this Act and any other enactment imposing a disqualification for registration as an elector. A person is qualified for registration as an elector for a polling district if the person A is either a citizen of Dominica or 2, a Commonwealth citizen who has resided in Dominica for a period of not less than 12 months immediately before the qualifying date. And it goes and says B is 18 years or over and has resided in that polling district for a continuous period of at least 3 months immediately
Preceding the
Prece-
qualifying date.
right, preceding the qualifying date. Okay, except that in the case of a person who has attained the age of 18 years and within the period of 3 months immediately preceding the date of the person's registration, okay, no such residence shall go disqualify that person. Now, and it's important for us to actually reference this thing. And then it goes on to speak about the whole issue about somebody in service to the state, etc., etc. Somebody working overseas, and but a Dominican, maybe in a mission, Dominican mission overseas, working for CARICOM, etc. Because that in itself can qualify you by way of residency, or a bona fide student studying overseas, and your home address will be seen as your normal address. So all those things are spelled out in that proposed measure, and therefore enforcing, if I would use that word, the spirit of the Constitution. So it's not the same. It does not say that for you to vote that you must be resident in Dominica. That is something that we want to dispel here tonight, and to make it fundamentally clear that that's not the case. And it's coming from
the Constitution does not say that.
Yeah, and it's not coming from me. It's coming from a legal practitioner who's also a draft person. Okay.
What the Constitution says is that if you want, you can put that requirement, but it does not put that requirement. It says as Parliament may prescribe. So Parliament is left to prescribe. As I said, I could give another example. Parliament could say that CARICOM citizens could vote instead of Commonwealth citizens.
Yeah.
But a citizen of Dominica, Parliament could just say the citizen of Dominica can vote once he comes in and is 3 months in country.
Yeah.
So somebody who's born overseas, but if he has a right to citizenship, his mother is from Dominica, his father from Dominica, he could come to Dominica and within 3 months he can vote with nothing else.
Bearing in mind, in America, you can vote. You can register to vote on the day of elections.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, very interesting. So I think, do you have any other thing to say insofar as this section is concerned, in terms of any further clarity that you may want to put out there?
Well, essentially, I think we in Dominica, we need to understand that the Constitution tells us what we can do. And it tells the government in Section 33 what the government can do in exercise of its powers under Section 42, which is Peace, Order, and Good Governance Clause.
42.
And the framers of the Constitution, they were still in the mood of thinking Commonwealth, because they could have had two different sections, one dealing strictly with citizens of Dominica and one dealing with Commonwealth citizens. But they didn't do that. They lumped us all together and they said Commonwealth citizens, and they left it wide open as to what qualifications government wants to put on the law in respect of residence or domicile, which means there can be such requirements or there can be none at all.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now, in terms of, as we move to the benefits of the confirmation process, what are the benefits you see going through a confirmation process? Although we made reference to that just now, a confirmation process, what do you think it provides?
Well, to me, it's an easy process in terms of I am already on the list and I just have to take certain action to ensure I remain on the list. It's as easy as that. It's left to me, a citizen. I want to exercise my right to vote. I want to remain on the list to do what I need to do to remain on the list.
Yes, all right.
Because the flip side of the coin is that a whole machinery, a lot of people have to be mobilized to go house to house looking for people to put them on the new list and ready registration. But you'll only capture people who are on island.
Right. Now, the fact is, do you believe that will address at least initially, the whole issue of a bloated list?
Okay, it will also deal with, for example, there's a lot of talk about dead people voting. You hear that from before I was born. I'm sure that conversation was there.
Yeah.
But there's a process in the law whereby you can get people off the list. Any citizen can do that. But even in the bill, you have what exists already, where the registrar has to send the list to the Electoral Commission of all people who died within the last 6-month period.
People above the
And then the names are removed.
above the age of 18 and above.
Sorry?
People above the age of 18 and above.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is you don't have to have registration to remove people from the list.
And that's I wanted to repeat that. That's a very important.
Because any citizen can ask the registrar for the names of the dead, paid a fee, the name of the people who died last year, and you can go to the list and check and see whether the people have been removed.
I wanted to repeat that though.
Excuse me?
I wanted to repeat that.
Yeah, essentially what I'm saying is that there's a process where you can remove people from the list. And in the legislation now, which is there already in the present legislation, but in the draft, you have a situation where the registrar has a duty to send to the Electoral Commission the names of all people who died within the past 6 months, so that the people can be removed from the existing list.
Okay, you're making a very important point there. If we were to go under the proposed Registration of Electors Act, on the Section 26C, all right? Do you have it there? Do you want to read it? Which places an obligation, a mandate, on the Registrar General, shall within 15 days after the end of each quarter, okay, cause to be transmitted to the Chief Registering Officer a list of persons 18 years of age or over whose death have been registered under the Registration of Births and Death Act during that quarter.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And that's the point. So there's already a mandate. And if you go on to B, because you know that people who are serving a 1-year sentence or somebody who has been sentenced to death cannot vote. So under B it says the superintendent of prisons shall not later than every 15 days, okay, do the same thing. 15 days of the month, following each quarter, transmit to the chief election officer a list of names of persons who are at that date serving that sentence, which would disqualify that person from voting.
Yep.
And there's also a mandate on the permanent secretary in external affairs.
But people are overseas in missions and
missions, etc., etc. So, and I'm happy that you just brought that out, and that is the intention there of this program, is to try to educate the public. Some people are stubborn; they don't want to buy into what is truthful, but we still have to attempt to do that. And so it's important that we understand that even without that process of confirmation, which will result in the cleansing of the list, because if you're saying that you have an issue with dead people voting or impersonation, which there has never been such cases before, and let us see how many dead people are going to show up to confirm his own name on your list.
Yeah, no dead man can come and reconfirm.
Because if you were to go, if we were to go on, let us, insofar as the confirmation process is concerned, Mr. Laronde, do we want to look at Section 49?
What number?
Section 49. Section 49, that speaks about the confirmation process. Okay, so 49 says, confirmation of registration. And if you go into subsection 2, 49 subsection 2, it says the person to whom this part applies shall within the confirmation period, as prescribed under section 50, which is, of course, we just spoke about 12 months, or it can be extended up to 15 months, all right? Shall apply to have his own name his or her registration as an elector confirmed, right?
Yeah.
And that application shall be made in a prescribed form in a manner that shall be accompanied by such document and information as may be prescribed. Now, it becomes interesting that subsection 3, 49.3. What does section 49.3 says, Mr. Laronde? Maybe.
Your registration of a person to whom this part applies is not confirmed. Under this part, the name of the person shall be deleted from the register of electors.
Thank you very much. Which simply means that your name will not be published in a new list, okay, to be published after the confirmation process. So that
And
is
then 51 says,
yeah, you can appeal.
where the person did not apply for confirmation
Yeah,
during the confirmation period declared under 50,
yeah,
on account of special or unusual circumstances,
yeah.
the person may no later than 1 month after the expiration of the confirmation period inform in such manner as the Commission may prescribe or approve, seek the permission of the Commission to make a late application. So the door is not closed. Because remember, we have 12 months, then you can extend to 15 months.
No, I wanted to read the finish part of it because they say the Commission.
Then the person can come back.
The Commission may approve. Can you read the last section of it? Last portion?
Last one.
No, in the same area section you were about the person making a special request.
Yeah, where a person to whom this part applies did not apply for the confirmation of his or her registration during the confirmation period declared under section 50, which will be 12 months, which can go up to 15 months, can be extended on account of special or unusual circumstances. Right. The person may not later than 1 month after the expiration of the confirmation period, in such form and manner as the Commission may prescribe or approve, seek the permission of the Commission to make a late application, and in making the request shall specify the special or unusual circumstances that prevent him from making the application. So the person can move to within a month. But in spite of not doing that within that month, that person can still come and register as a voter. You see, we have to be very clear about that. It's not a question of you have to confirm within 12 months. If there is extension within 15 months, then you have 1 month that you say special circumstances. I was sick, I was unaware, I was in Alaska, I was wherever in Zimbabwe, and it closed. No, it does not close. You qualify, you can come and register as a voter.
But having said that, if your name is deleted, then you have to prove the qualification, 3 months qualification to get them back on your list. So the thing is a well detailed and well thought of piece of legislation that is being proposed insofar as the registration of Electors Act is concerned, the proposed act is concerned, and so no dead man, Mr. Laronde, or woman
reconfirm.
Can come and confirm. I mean, it means they're going forward because the list that going to be developed thereafter. It's going to be a list that matters. So I believe that in that spirit, the whole issue of the cleansing of the list can be achieved. And as you rightly said just now, and to avoid a very taxing, time-consuming process of a registration, which of course nobody, somebody who was living overseas and working, was on the voters list. And I do not share the opinion or the view that a citizen who has already gotten his name on the voters list has to prove that he has a house in Dominica, that he's sending barrels to Dominica, that he has any connection for his name to remain on the list and for him to cast his vote. I do not buy into that because I give prominence to the whole issue of citizenship. And that is your right to vote should be tied to your citizenship. But that notwithstanding, there's so many demarcations in the law, and that make it so transparent. And I'm not sure why some of us have difficulties in understanding what is black, what isn't black, what the things that are actually in black and white. Okay, so we have dealt with that matter, that the confirmation process, and you do not show up, under Section 49, subsection 3, your name shall be deleted. If for one reason there was some special circumstance, you have to prove it, and it has to go to the commission, and the commission will review your request, and if the commission is convinced that your situation was special, and it was such that that would require the commission to reassess your case, and then they can approve your confirmation. Yes, you get my point.
Yeah, but we need to emphasize that in spite of that, the door is not closed.
No.
In other words, when you go to the commission and says, I could not within the time do what was necessary to get confirmed and to remain on the list, the job of the commission is not to try to remove you or to prevent you from staying. So the commission will just look, and once you would have met the requirements, if you had acted within the time, you'll be on the list.
Yeah.
But what is most important is that if you do not move within that month period, because you are qualified to vote, to be on the voters list, you can go through the normal process and register. This is extremely important.
Okay, let us go to a next very important matter. We have disposed of Section 43(2)(a) and B, the voter ID card. And it's very interesting, as opposed to a national ID card, which is multifaceted in the sense that it can be used for so many different things as obtained in other countries. But we are going forward as a country. What is being proposed is a voter ID card with facial recognition. Now, there's also the concern by some that the voter ID card must, not should they say, must contain fingerprints among other biometrics. What are your views on that?
Well, there are certain words that I'm very cautious in using. Must is one of them. I is another one. You see, one can suggest, recommend, or be of the opinion that certain things should be. So one can be of the opinion that you should have fingerprints on your voter ID card. You see, but the question is that necessary? Or is that something that citizens would want? I'm not talking about some citizens. Can we attain the same goal? Can we reach the same goal? Can we achieve the same level of security we want if you have facial recognition? And that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. I mean, I have traveled to St. Lucia on my social security ID, my driver's license. And we're talking about going to another country. And there's no need for fingerprints. So to say that we must have fingerprints, maybe it is a good idea to have fingerprints. But do we need to have fingerprints? Is that absolutely necessary to attain the end that we want to attain? And every citizen of Dominica can easily determine for his or herself. In my opinion, it is not something that is absolutely necessary. Maybe it's the ideal situation, but can we not achieve the same goal by having facial recognition?
Well, no, facial scan is a form of biometrics. As you know, biometrics include facial scan. It includes your veins. It includes the way your ears are formed, the way your voice, all that's biometric, and so it's been proposed and facial recognition. Bearing in mind, I'm not sure if you read the survey report from Sir Byron, and where a survey was done, because some of us conveniently pick out some of the recommendations that are sympathetic to our views from Sir Byron, and then we isolate certain portion of it. And so it's because 54.5% of the people polled were against a specific voter ID card. Okay, and almost 55%, 54.5 again, were in favor of a national ID card for that can be used for multi purposes. You get my point? That's what the survey is saying. And if you go to the annex of the report on the website, you'll see that. All right? So I'm happy that you make a reference to that. That notwithstanding, it has been proposed that a voter ID card for the purpose of voting with facial recognition. And
okay,
so,
when you look at most of the crimes that are being solved internationally, it is based on photographs, cameras taking pictures on the highway when you drive, down the street. Facial recognition, that's how they identify people. I mean, it's not a unique thing that you just come and take a photograph and the stupid niece and say that's a picture. It's a higher science.
Right. Thank you. I'm happy that you said that, because certainly, if you take a facial scan with proper security, and people have unique cheekbone, even if you were to put somebody were to put makeup, and you can use, if you were to use broom to put makeup on your face, that your cheekbone will still be detected. You'll have to go and actually perform plastic
but on
surgery.
the other hand, somebody might
surgery.
just take a simplistic view and think it's just a photograph of somebody that you're going to put. That's a very simplistic, unscientific view, because that's not what it is.
Thank you very much. Now, and there's also the take by some, though, Mr. Laronde, that what is the big deal when you're going to somebody else's border? You go to the States to take your fingerprints. Is that a fair comparison to be made? Someone who's seeking to gain entry into somebody's country, as opposed to somebody trying to exercise his or her franchise by way of voting?
No, I don't see it that way, but that's my opinion.
Okay. Now, so as far as you're concerned, the voter ID card with the facial recognition can suffice.
I think so. I mean, it is science you're talking about. It's not just a photograph that you go down the road and I can't remember the name in Kennedy, in King George V Street, Masterville, and you take a picture. It's not that.
I like the way you say that. Now, somebody sent me a message there. I'll ask you to explain it in a while. I don't think it's so. You are the guest, so I'm going to allow you to answer the question. But let us, because we have a number of more issues to discuss here tonight and to dispose of. Access to the state-owned media. And to me, that's a landmark decision to have been made, and where a sitting government have decided in office to allow equal access to the state-owned media, inclusive of GIS and of course DBS Radio. Now, there's another take that is not going far enough, that there should be a legal mandate placed on all media houses, including privately owned media houses, maybe the Voice of Life and etc. All radio stations. How do you? What's your take on that, Mr. Laronde?
Okay, the draft legislation speaks to access to state-owned radio, media, in terms of strictly government or statutory corporations. I think everybody would be happy with that. And I have heard the discourse where some people believe that it should apply to all media houses. Again, that is a good idea, but how practical is it? How practical is it for government to tell a radio station that you must give access, a non-state radio station, you must give access to every political party and every independent candidate on the radio station during the election season? Equal access. I mean, who pays for that? And who pays market value for the time? In other words, the state can carry that burden, and the state, I think, has a duty to carry that burden to ensure level playing field, that people's voices can be heard. But when the state ventures out there and says to a newspaper that everybody, if X party has a full page, everybody should get a full page, that you go to a radio station, one party wants 4 hours, everybody should have 4 hours, all the parties, independent candidate 1 hour. I mean, is that practical? I do not think it is. And is the private sector, the owners of the media houses, are they going to agree? Are they going to cooperate? Or are we saying that the government should legislate and say you have to? And you're talking about in a country where you have free enterprise, where you have, people have a right to have businesses, people have a right to invest in radio stations and so on. And then government says, okay, election time, we're essentially taking over your radio station. I think you can do that in times of national calamity. When you have a hurricane, when you have an emergency, you can do that. But it's asking a little too much, which I don't think the country can afford. But that's just my view. You see, we can live in a utopian world and think that everything should be perfect. Everything ought to be. Instead of saying this is the minimum that will satisfy the needs we have. But if we say this is the max, we want the maximum, I'm not sure. So I don't know how practical it is for government to say to non-state players that you have to give access.
Yeah, I believe, and then if we were to reference the appropriate section there under the proposed measure, which is, of course, the House of Assembly Elections Bill that has been proposed under Section 50, subsection 1. And it says, that a political party and any independent candidate participating in an election shall have access to state-owned media services during the campaign period.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what it's saying. In subsection 2, it says the commission, and it's important, not the government, and not the minister who is responsible by law for either GIS or Debris Radio. It says that the commission shall, after consultations with the political parties concerned, independent candidates, and the officers responsible for the state-owned media services, monitor and equal allocation of airtime during the campaign period. Okay, and it goes further to say under subsection 3, 50 subsection 3, every state-owned print or electronic media that publishes information relating to an election shall be guided by the principle of total impartiality and shall refrain from any discrimination in relation to any political party or candidate.
Yeah, that's the legislation.
Yeah. So are you going to say that same thing to a privately owned media house?
Well, it's difficult to achieve that.
Yeah. So you're saying that, in your view, that is going far enough?
Yeah. Basically, I'm saying that this is a serious milestone,
right,
in terms of opening access, state-owned media houses to all political parties and people contesting elections.
Can I ask a question and be honest with me? Most of you are. Did you ever thought that would have happened in Dominica? No, seriously speaking.
The answer I'd give is I'd say that I think most people never thought that would happen.
Okay, but say it again, because I mean, let's be honest.
That's true. I think most people never thought that would happen.
Well, you're a former Attorney General. All right.
Yeah.
We know that I do a program on debate, some Calypso Classic, and I have most of my songs. Or sometimes I would have seen, and may I soul rest in peace, Sherman Green handwriting. Do not play on air.
You see, the thing is,
you still have that on debate radio. Do not play on air.
You see, we tend to forget that we've been in that game since 1978,
right? When
we got independence. And all these issues were there, and all these issues were alive from 1978.
But off the record a bit, you are AG. Can't you recall? I mean, don't get vexed tonight. You know, we are partners long time.
Can I recall that?
Yeah. Can you recall that there was some recommendation and it was funded? You were not briefed on that before the program, but I know you're a very sharp person. For some form of electoral reform in Dominica, it was funded, I think, by the Canadian during your time.
I remember.
I have a copy of the letter. Yeah, okay. And it just says how far we have been. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. How far we have been. And we have made some progress. And there's much more progress to be made, but at least Rome was not built in a day. Now, in terms of the legal impediment that may arise if you were to go to an extent where a legal mandate is being placed on the privately owned media houses, do you foresee any legal impediment that may arise as a consequence?
Well, if I was advising a radio station, for example, my first approach would be market value for the time. So if government is willing to pay the market value for the time, this airspace, okay. But in the absence of that, our challenge to government, right, it's not a national emergency. It's not after a hurricane. It's not a volcanic explosion. It's not war. That you're essentially taking over my business.
Yeah, and basically, because once you legislate, that's what you
do. You can legislate, but the court has to say whether what you did can stand. You know, you can legislate, but you cannot just legislate and take people's rights or take people's properties. So that's what I'm saying again. If it is a situation where after a calamity, you're saying we need to take over radio stations.
No.
For example, in the draft telecoms legislation, the minister is then empowered to take certain actions in terms of telecom apparatus and telecoms in Dominica if you have hurricanes or if you have a state of emergency in terms of a national crisis. So that's a different thing. But everyday business for purposes of election that you can essentially take over a radio station and say, well, during election, we so many candidates, so many parties, so we run 10 hours a day. I mean, yes, you'd have to me, the only way you could escape is if you pay for it.
Right. Now, somebody's asking a question they want to ask. The person sent me a WhatsApp. And can the chief election officer just remove somebody's names on the voters list? Unilaterally or something?
Yes, sir?
Can the chief election officer, by his or herself, just remove somebody's name on the voters list without due process? The person is not dead, and there's no death certificate issued by the to that effect. And can somebody just walk to the electoral commission and go to the chief election officer and just place an objection and based on the objection, without any investigation and due process, remove somebody's name from the voters list?
Yes, if somebody comes in and the person has, for example, a death certificate or they have proof, I think it's incumbent on the commission to look at it.
Yeah, but I'm saying, apart from, I made a reference, in the absence of that, can somebody just, without proof?
No, that would be an abuse of process.
Okay. And why do you say that?
Yeah, you cannot do that.
Okay. Yeah. Because and it's important for us to, bring all those issues then to the public, because we have been hearing so many things being said and why people's names are not being removed from the voters list. Why, and it's important for us to ensure that people are clear on those things. The other issues that we want to talk about the whole issue of campaign financing and what it means. And as you know, that is something that we're looking at down the road. But before we go on the issue of bribery, treating, and undue influence under the House of Assembly elections bill, section 60 to 63, we want to look at that. And we have heard a back and forth as that the definition, insofar as bribery is concerned, does not go far enough. And to the extent to which there is almost an insistence by some that definition should include providing transportation to people to come to Dominica from overseas to vote. That should be clearly spelled out in the definition of bribery as bribery. What is your take on that?
Okay. You see, bribery has been defined by the courts in case law.
Mm-hmm.
So to come and say, well, it might be a situation where an action qualifies as bribery.
Mm-hmm.
But that is for a court to decide whether what happened, whatever it is, what transpired amounts to bribery.
Right.
So to me, it's a little much for somebody to say, well, put in the legislation, X, Y, and Z is bribery. Because the definition of bribery, you have to do an act that will cause somebody to behave in a certain way to achieve a benefit which you want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever the act is, you pay somebody to perform an act for your benefit to achieve your goal. So there's no need to say, to give an example in legislation. You don't do that. But whoever thinks that the circumstances exist that amount to bribery, well, that's a different story. That the police will charge, or he can bring a private criminal action, and the court will determine whether the circumstances amount to bribery.
Mm-hmm. No,
you see, and the other thing too, like, we have to accept and understand, right, that in law, there are times that you are sure that action has taken place which amounts to a crime.
mm-hmm.
But as to whether or not it is a crime, it is based on the evidence that is before the adjudicating officer.
Mm-hmm.
The magistrate or there's a judge, the evidence before him, whether it meets the criteria. So all of us can stand on the side of the road and say, this is bribery, this is undue influence. But that's not how it works. You have to get the evidence and you have to satisfy a court that the crime has been committed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why sometimes you have situation I can recall, because I'm one who was taken to court several times, but was simply winning elections, and sometimes the affidavits are not properly pleaded, so like folks going on a fishing expedition, and that is not acceptable before the court to deliver evidence, as you rightly said.
Yeah.
And I was drawing a reference, though, Mr. Laronde, and I was making reference to the definition of theft, which is very interesting, and that you dishonestly appropriate something belonging to another. You understand?
Yeah.
With the intention of permanently depriving the other of it, the person of it, and that is theft. I've never seen taking somebody's pig that does not belong to you, with the view of making it yours. Clearly defined in the definition of theft. It simply means that, as you rightly said, the elements of that offense has to be proven, of that particular act that would constitute theft. Isn't that so?
That's
No, so I mean, so you try to use those kind of analogies there, and trying to explain, and people still don't, because everybody have their own intentions, you know. So we are just about to call it an evening. So I mean, we have been spending time speaking to the public. We may want to open your line. We will open your line for a few seconds. The number to call is 448-32 3284, and or you want to call 1-800-427. And let us go to a very interesting topic again, and the issue of campaign financing, which is a very broad topic, and so it is something that I've gotten to the point where it has been said by many: if there's no campaign financing in the one of the proposed measures, namely by way of regulations under the House of Assembly Act itself, that there will be no electoral reform. What is your general view as to, do you believe that there is merit in holding back or delaying the current measures that have been proposed, unless we insert in one of the bills proposed measures on campaign financing? And of course, as you know, there are different dimensions to campaign financing.
Okay, holding back a bill, it can be interpreted two ways. That the government decides not to proceed, or the opposition is saying the bill should not move because of X reason. So the government anytime can decide not going forward, or the government can decide to go forward. Now, when you look at all the things we have said tonight, and when you look at the draft legislation, there are a lot of things that make the system better. There's a lot of progress, there are a lot of new things, which, to my mind, I would never advise any group of people to have a position that, in spite of what we have before us now, what we just discussed, what is in the bill, we do not want it to go forward because there's nothing to talk to addressing campaign financing. I would not advise somebody to take that position. And that is not the same as saying that someone should not insist or ask for campaign financing. Because that can come in a bill by itself. That is something that can be discussed, that can be developed. It's not as simplistic as one would think, that every candidate should get $500. I mean, it's much more than that. So you have to have a system in place, properly regulated, properly policed, if you're talking about having legislation dealing with campaign financing. It's not just a provision saying each political party will get $2,000 or can only spend $100. How do you ensure, how do you police? There have to be things in place. There have to be regulations. There have to be clear understanding. There has to be clear policies developed. So it's a good idea. It's something that we need to work to. I have seen nothing wrong with that. But to say that you do not want a bill that talks to all the things we spoke about tonight, unless you have campaign financing. I would never advise a political party or anybody to take that position. I would not do it.
No, you made some very important points on this specific issue that we're discussing now, campaign financing, and because we had a few sessions recently. One of the things being proposed is that in every constituency, $50 per constituent. And I'm not sure what kind of formula was used to arrive at that. Because as you know, when you're talking about campaign financing, you have to come up with a formula that is responsive to our needs. And societies are different. And I'm saying to myself, the days when I used to run, and as a candidate, one of my center in my area, the center of gravity would have been maybe the lab. I do not drink alcoholic beverages. I understand? But you go there and they give music play, and you take a bump with the fellas in the block. The partner in the shop there, for my partner there, some guys they take a drink. You have to ask them for a receipt.
You see, if I can just simplify the thing, I mean, you have a bill. The bill is addressing a lot of things.
Yeah.
So you have a house. The bill, let's say the bill is a house. And you give somebody a house, and they say to you, I do not want the house unless it comes with a veranda. Yes, it's nice to have a veranda, but if you have a house without a veranda, you're better off than having no house at all. So if you have a bill that's addressing and moving the process forward, that's addressing electoral reform. It's not satisfying you in every way like to satisfy you. But for you to say, I do not want that bill to go forward, I don't want it because I want a house, but it must have a veranda.
It must have.
I don't understand.
Every room must be a master bedroom.
I don't understand that.
You understand? Every room must be a master bedroom. Mr. Laronde, I mean, it was an honor. We will be back with you again on some other very interesting topic. I see my good friend is already in the studio. Her name is synonymous with DBS Radio. In the days of, of all the great personalities who have passed through the doors of DBS Radio. It's Joseph Seraphine, understand?
Okay.
Yeah.
And, in those days, DBS Radio used to have a serious library. And, yeah. So he started as a librarian there, can we call it, before on DBS Radio for a time, very, very, very small. Yeah. So she's here there tonight, and sometimes she holds on for me on Calypso Classic Night. Now, so Mr. Laronde, any closing remarks, something you may have missed on, you want to recap, or anything that you want to say before we call it a night here tonight? And,
what I'd say is that I'm very happy to be here, and I hope that my intervention has brought some clarity and some issues that people will think about and discuss in terms of the way forward. But at the end of the day, you see, governance is about compromise. You see, politics is about compromise. It's about service. It's about the end game. It is not about confrontation. It is not about never agreeing. It is about coming together to serve for the common good. So it's not always about winning. And that's my take. That's how I live my life. So I trust that fellow Dominicans, that we look at the good, look at what we're doing that is moving the process forward. And let us not lose sight of what else needs to be done. Thank you, Honourable Minister.
So are you satisfied that the proposed measures are in fact very significant and is a step in the right direction and is comprehensive in scope?
But definitely, I said so. Not the same words as you did, but I said so. And I think we should proceed.
Okay, you think we should proceed. Thank you very much, Mr. Laronde, Thank you to our listeners, those of you who join us on the DBS Radio's Facebook page, and those of you who listen from your homes, some from your workplaces in Dominica and overseas. Good evening to my cousin back in Dominica. She can vote, Jackie, and my other cousin Dean, who treat me so nicely in Canada, in Dominica right now, and my uncle, father to me in Canada when I went to school, Mr. Luke, so nice, Jonas Luke, who actually lived Dominica when he was 23 years old, and his name is still on everybody's list, and he's back, retired, and invested a significant amount of money in Dominica by ensuring that he have his house in Dominica, and Dominica is his homeland. Are you saying to me you cannot vote? Good evening to you. To our wonderful listeners, DBS Radio, the #1 station, always. See you in the last Thursday of the month of the month of February.
Chaka and Rick and Marshall. So you know you be where the Rasta man say. So you know fi snip no cocaine down there. You know you be where the Rasta man say. So you know fi snip no cocaine down there. The cocaine a get them